All right, well, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Rob Perani. I'm the director of the New York, New Jersey Harbor and Estuary Program hosted here at the Hudson River Foundation. Just a couple of, while we're still waiting for people to kind of trickle in, a couple of reminders before we start the webinar on our RFP for building community capacity for climate resiliency. This meeting is being recorded. And we'll be posting that recording to our website afterwards. Please stay on mute while we're going through the presentation, but while you're listening to us, please feel free to use the chat to submit questions while we're presenting. If you prefer to submit your question anonymously, you can send it directly to Liz Valadares, and then we'll once we go into Q&A, we'll either ask you to unmute and read your questions, depending on how many we have, or we'll read them all off anonymous and otherwise. And you can, if you haven't posted a question, and when we open it up, you can use the raise hand function, and we'll call folks in the order that you submitted your questions or raise your hand. So when we go on to the next slide. You know, I'm joined here by two of my colleagues at HEP and the Foundation, Rosanna Pedronobra and Liz Valadares, who have been working with me on developing the RFP. You know, you'll hear from us each in turn. You know, our agenda, basically, I'm going to provide a quick overview of HEP you know, what, you know, kind of the background for the RFP. Then I'm going to turn it over to Rosanna, who's going to talk, you know, kind of go through the RFP itself in terms of objectives, the funding that's available, some of our eligibility, including our definition of disadvantaged communities, how we're going to be scoring the RFPs and our timeline, and a couple of sample activities and projects just to, you know, bring it all home. And then, you know, we'll turn it over to Liz and she'll help moderate the Q&A session. We're hoping we get through the presentation in the next 20, 25 minutes. So we'll leave a lot of time for Q&A, and we can stay a little bit longer if need be to make sure we got all your questions answered. Next. So I know a lot of the folks, and again, thanks everybody for coming and joining us today. So I know a lot of you guys are partners in HEP already, or certainly know what we're about. But for those of you who are new, the Harbor and Estuary Program was started in 1987. We're part of the National Estuary Program. And like our sister estuary programs around the country, we were created by EPA, and in our case, the governors of New York and New Jersey, to basically bring people together around the implementation of the Clean Water Act. You know, how we achieve fishable, swimmable waters throughout the estuary, whether it's in the harbor estuary, sort of the saltier, more urban portion of the Hudson River Estuary, or in the entire watershed. We work together with those partners to create an action agenda, 40 priorities that we've come together on that address, you know, our shared goals and objectives. And, you know, we have a number of work groups and committees. Again, I know a lot of folks on the call are already members of that. We certainly encourage all of you to consider joining us at one of our meetings, and you can learn more about our work at harborestuary.org and see if there's a committee or work group that you'd like to take part in. So this particular RFP really flows from our water quality objective, but it's made possible thanks to Congress's bipartisan infrastructure law. And I'm sure folks are familiar, but November 2021, Congress passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, and it really provides a lot of funding to address climate resiliency and in particular target that funding towards disadvantaged communities. For us at HEP, we're fortunate enough to receive $909,000 per year for 5 years. We're currently in the, sort of have received our contract from EPA for the first 2 years of that funding. And that's where this grant funding is being made available through, again, thanks to Congress and our partners, DPA. And in particular, EPA has provided some guidance for us on spending that money. And it sort of, again, very much mirrors the objectives that Rosanna's going to go through in terms of investing in infrastructure. There's an infrastructure law, addressing climate change, advancing environmental justice, and leveraging complementing partner activity. And you'll see how that applies here in this RFP in just a few minutes. And then in terms of, most of all, Congress provided this funding to the National Estuary Program because they saw we had consensus-driven plans kind of with shared priorities that could make use of this money. And for us, and this RFP, it's really objective E that you see here in terms of, something that our partners came together on a few years ago, which is really, understanding, assessing, and addressing the impacts of climate change on water quality. And by that, we define that as being not just the impacts of climate change, but the impacts of adaptation measures that our region is, looking at in terms of addressing, flooding and other, implications of climate change. So that's really sort of the backdrop. And let me turn it over to Rosanna now, who will kind of go through the RFP specifically.
Thanks, Rob. So just jumping right into the RFP, we wanted to start off with the primary objectives of this RFP, really building on the intention of the bipartisan infrastructure law. We're looking at for the following 4 objectives. The first one, enabling disadvantaged communities to fully participate in planning and decisions about coastal adaptation and other infrastructure. So proposals that can build capacity for disadvantaged communities to fully participate in federal, state, or local decisions, or otherwise demonstrate coordination with the lead project agency are highly encouraged. So, for example, projects across the estuary and its watersheds could include, but certainly not limited to, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, New York, New Jersey Harbor and Tributaries Coastal Storm Risk Management Feasibility Study, also known as HATS, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Resilient New Jersey Initiatives, New York State's Climate Smart Communities Program, or projects under the Adopt New York City Planning Framework. The second part we're looking for are projects that will advance community-initiated projects, including those that will help communities gain access to future federal and state infrastructure funding around climate resiliency. We're also looking for efforts that assess the state of existing knowledge, as well as the development, implementation, and evaluation of outreach programs are encouraged. So projects that engage community members to participate in the co-production of required data or knowledge are especially encouraged. And lastly, the fourth objective, we really want to see the strength of collaboration between disadvantaged communities, government, scientists, and or utilities. So for funding, we have approximately $400,000 that are available for this grant period. We're expecting to fund between 4 to 8 projects with an anticipated medium range of between $50,000 to $100,000. Match is not required for this RFP. However, it is encouraged and it is on our scoring criteria. So you can include contributions from outside funds, in-kind services, or other match within your LOI. And then funds can be used to really support salary, fringe, travel, equipment, or supplies and professional services. However, please note that food and construction costs are ineligible. And then we do hope and expect to be able to support this initiative in the future. And so just to broaden a little bit and give some background on what we mean by disadvantaged communities, we basically use a combination of 4 demographic and geographic indicators to determine where disadvantaged communities are located that could benefit from HEP activities. So each of these indicators use distinct criteria, which includes EPA's 5-factor demographic index alongside the states of New York and New Jersey's definitions, as well as our own outreach during our 2017 and 2025 action agenda development. So this really allows us to consider disadvantaged communities identified from the federal, state, and local perspective across the harbor estuary that you see here zoomed in this interactive map, but also for the entire Hudson Valley estuary. So we really encourage applicants to either be from a disadvantaged community or working in service to a disadvantaged community. This interactive map is available. Liz has provided the link directly onto the chat here for you to toggle in and explore these boundaries, as well as toggling in the different indicators to understand the sources that we're using for our definition. And so to be eligible, you must be a nonprofit organization with the 501c3 status or a local government agency located in or otherwise serving a disadvantaged community, as defined by HEP from the previous slide on that map. Or you must partner with a 501c3 or local government entity to apply. Your proposed project must be within the boundaries of the Hudson Valley Estuary, which, as Rob mentioned, has a northern boundary of Troy Dam near Albany, New York, and a southern boundary of the Sandy Hook Rockaway Point Transect. And again, I want to stress that your proposal project must be either located in or servicing a disadvantaged community. And so just to go over a little bit of the evaluation criteria, which you'll find further detailed in Appendix D of the RFP for which we'll be using to evaluate all the proposals. Final decisions will be made by the Hudson River Foundation staff and an external advisory committee. We'll be looking at scores, but we'll also be considering things like geographic and topical distribution. So you'll score high if you are clear about your motivation and can connect back to one or more of the 4 objectives within the RFP. We'll be looking for a well thought out course of action, how that community will be involved, your outputs and outcomes are in line with the RFP, and your project timeline is realistic for a completion of no later than June 2025. We want to see that you have a clear connection with the disadvantaged community, whether you are located in one or working to serve a community, in addition to working towards building capacity for climate leadership and engaging in relevant federal, state, or local climate resiliency initiatives. And then lastly, we are looking for budgets that are clear, reasonable, and justified. And as I mentioned earlier, while match is not required, you are able to show, if you are able to show contributions of outside funds or in-kind services or other match, be sure to incorporate that into your LOIs so that way you can get those extra points. So some really important dates to consider for this RFP moving forward. Thank you all for joining us today, May 1st, for this informational webinar. Looking forward, your letter of inquiry will be due on June 1st, which you'll email directly to me. You may hear from us seeking a conversation in June to help us better understand your letter and or provide you with some feedback to help you further strengthen your ideas. You'll then hear from us officially to invite you to submit a full proposal on July 1st, and then we'll be expecting to receive your full proposal no later than 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on August 15th. And then from that point, we'll likely notify you on or about September 15th as to whether you will receive a grant for which we'll begin to work on this fall. And apologize for the loud noises behind me. The project should be in to be completed by or around June of 2025, with the final report due to HEP around September of 2025. So just to stress again, some important takeaways as you consider your proposal and your project ideas. We want to see that you can demonstrate collaboration between different stakeholder groups and to build community capacity into work that is being advanced at the local, state, or federal level. So, for example, some initiatives across the estuary include plans that you see here, such as the Army Corps' HATS project, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Resilient New Jersey initiatives for the Northeastern New Jersey and Raritan River Bay communities, New York State's Climate Smart Communities program, projects being advanced under Adapt NYC for planning framework, which includes New York City's Department of Environmental Protection cloudburst initiatives. We're also really interested in projects that will add capacity for disadvantaged communities to make more informed decisions around climate resiliency and help communities gain access to future federal and state infrastructure funding and focus. So to help you think a little bit more about your projects moving forward, we encourage you to consider knowledge co-production opportunities that aim to meet specific community needs around resiliency. We recognize that the capacity of organizations serving disadvantaged communities is sometimes limited, and this work can include necessary capacity building efforts that will help achieve the RFP objectives. So when you're thinking about your proposed activities and outcomes, they can either stand on their own or they can be a part of a larger project or campaign. Some relevant examples that can be included but not limited are community engagement activities, convening stakeholders around climate change mitigation and adaptation projects as it relates to water quality. It can include coastal flooding, stormwater management to address flooding, and other climate efforts that relate to water resource management. And lastly, in terms of project ideas, proposals that look to provide technical assistance, research, monitoring, or data analysis, and planning activities must show that you are enabling disadvantaged communities within the Hudson River and Estuary to fully participate in planning and decisions about coastal adaptation and other infrastructure projects being advanced in the federal, state, and local agencies. So that is, in a nutshell, what's included in the RFP. But I wanted to spend just a few minutes on this letter of inquiry, which is due on June 1st. So understanding that capacity is always a concern, we have decided to ease the barrier in applying by going through a letter of inquiry. So we encourage you to keep your letter to about 1 page. However, if you need the extra space, please try to keep it to a max of 2 pages. This slide shows the checklist that you'll want to include, and a template is available within the RFP under Appendix A. So just 4 things that I want to call attention on this slide as you think about preparing your letter of inquiry. One is our expectation for this grant is to see that you are either from or working in service to a disadvantaged community within the Hudson River and Estuary, and that you have strong collaborations within the community and other stakeholders at local, state, and federal levels. 2, be sure that you are incorporating or reflecting on your proposal meeting one of the 4 objectives of the RFP. Where are you enabling a disadvantaged community to fully participate in activities around coastal adaptation and infrastructure needs? Where are you advancing community initiated projects, addressing data gaps in knowledge, and or showing strong collaborations? 3, think about your project timeline and be, sorry about that. Think about your project timeline and be confident that you can complete it in no later than June 2025. And 4, lastly, if you have any matching funds or in-kind contributions, don't forget to include this in your letter for extra points. You will again email me by June 1st at rosanna@hudsonriver.org, where you'll then receive an email confirmation of your submission with the subject line Climate LOI Submission Confirmation. So make sure that you get that email from me. If not, make sure you're spelling my name right. It's 1 N, not 2. And then we may ask, as I mentioned before, between June and that July 1st date where we would be inviting folks to submit full proposals. We will likely reach out to you to get a better understanding of your letter of inquiry and or provide you with some further feedback in the month of June to strengthen your ideas in preparation for a full proposal. And then just to provide some other updates that in case you haven't seen, in addition to this climate grant, we do have several other opportunities available that I just want to quickly mention. Our Advancing Habitat Restoration Grant is looking to support enhancement of sites recognized in the Hudson River and Estuary Comprehensive Restoration Plan, with a focus in or in service to residents of disadvantaged communities. The webinar recording is available already on our website for review, and we are accepting letters of inquiry until May 5th. We are also supporting community efforts and public programs in support of the proposed Harlem River Greenway project in the Bronx, and those letters are due on May 15th. And then to just end on a fun-filled event, our annual celebration of our waterways will be held on July 15th. We are providing funding to community organizations interested in hosting an event on City of Water Day this year, which will range between $1,000 and $4,000. We just extended the deadline until May 8th, so it's not due today. You still have an entire week to apply. So if you have if you're considering an event, do consider submitting an application, and I'm sure Liz will share with you some additional links around City of Water Day and the links from last year's map of events. So even if you are not applying, this is definitely a fun event to attend, and definitely check out the links of the map to see the different types of activities that you can visit. So thank you everyone for your time. I hope this overview was helpful. The remaining time is dedicated for Q&A with you all. I'll start with Liz, who's been monitoring the chat. And for those of you who want to ask a question, please use that raise hand function located in Zoom under the reactions toolbar. I also just want to remind folks, if you wish to ask a question anonymously or are having audio issues, please feel free to message Liz directly in the chat or just within the chat box itself. And I know that there are a number of you in attendance today, so please do try to be concise when asking your questions. And if we don't get to your questions today, you are more than welcome to reach out to myself and Rob via email. So rob@hudsonriver.org and Rosanna at hudsonriver.org with your questions, and we'll certainly get back to you. And that's it. So I will pass it over to Liz and stop sharing my screen to jump right into the Q&A.
Perfect. Thanks, Rosanna. Yes, so we did get a couple of questions, both anonymously and in the chat. So why don't I go ahead and jump to those as they came in order. The first one being, do projects have to focus specifically on water quality, or can we apply for an environmental justice project focused on reducing carbon emissions?
So maybe I'll jump on that one. So the purpose of this grant really is focused on water resource issues. So it doesn't necessarily have to be water quality, but we really are looking at, or you'll score higher, let's put it that way, if you're really focused on water resource, whether it's coastal flooding, stormwater, resilience to periods of drought, or other water resource needs. If there's if there's some implication to your carbon reduction project associated with water, you could highlight that. But it is about water resources.
Great, thanks, Rob. And then to the next question, Rosanna, I know you mentioned this during the LOI slide, but if you could repeat it in case anyone missed it. Also, as a reminder to the folks who just joined us in the last couple of minutes, please feel free to add your questions on the chat. Private message me anonymously if you want. Private message me if you want to your question read anonymously, or feel free to raise your hand. That's for anyone that's joining us here today. If you would like to voice your question, just please raise your hand and we will make sure that we give you some time to ask your question as well. You do not have to write it in the chat. That's just if you prefer. So again, back to that LOI question. Again, I think you covered this, but if you can just repeat it, what is the page limit for the LOI?
Yeah, so we prefer if you can keep your LOI to one page, but if you do need the extra space, feel free to go on to a second page, but we really don't want to see something that goes beyond that. So really try to be concise and direct. If your page starts looking busy and you need to go onto the second page, that's fine, but definitely no more than 2 pages.
Perfect.
Thank you for the question.
Thanks for reminding us of that, Rosanna. And then the next question that I have here, I think it's Krista. So Krista, if you want to add anything to this question, please feel free to jump in as well. Could you speak to the differences between this grant and the one that is due this Friday? So I believe Krista might be referring to the Habitat grant.
Yeah, so the grant on Friday is focused on habitat restoration. And you can see the details in the RFP, but it's really looking to advance habitat restoration projects, whether they're wetlands, shallow water, upland forests, in disadvantaged communities. Some of those obviously might have a climate implication, but they don't necessarily have to. Whereas this grant is really focused on the idea of both addressing climate change, whether it's adaptation or mitigation, and it's focused on water resources as opposed to a focus on habitat. So they're related. I could certainly imagine projects that would qualify for both, but there is a slightly different focus. And just anticipating a question that's come up before, you can apply for both. And you won't be penalized when we're scoring your letter of inquiry. We may, if your letter is great and it would qualify under either program, we may call you up and ask you which one is a priority. For these larger grants, unfortunately, we don't have that much funding, and we want to make sure we support as many groups and communities as possible. So we might come back to you and ask which of the projects is a priority.
Great, thank you. And so Scott Middleton also echoed those sentiments about the RFPs looking the same. So Scott, if there's any other questions you have on that, please feel free to also raise your hand or jump in the chat. So let's jump to Rick's question. If we have a few potential project ideas, can we run them by you ahead of time to get some initial feedback prior to the LOI due date?
Yes. Of course you can. Feel free to, again, reach out to myself and Rob. We're happy to, take a look at your project ideas and, help guide you in which we think, would be more supportive. Again, it won't, it's not us saying that, yes, we're going to fund you for this one or invite you to a full proposal, but we certainly have, no problem taking a look at what your projects are and where, you think you have the ability to really advance and where it really aligns with what this RFP is about and the goals that we have within our action agenda. So thank you, Rick, for those questions.
Yes, excellent question. And here's another really great question too. This one came in privately. Are there other New Jersey programs aside from HATS and Resilient New Jersey that applicants should be looking at? And then the second part of that question is also, do you have thoughts on how community groups can engage technical and government partners? And so let me know if you need me to repeat that question again.
Yes. So I could take the first part. It doesn't have to just be HATS or the Resilient New Jersey. There's definitely a lot going on, especially with the long-term control plans across the estuary in New Jersey, where you can partner with utilities and have conversations with them about how we can further incorporate climate initiatives within the long-term control plan effort. It's not. The long-term control plan effort is very specific on looking at reducing volumes of combined sewage overflow within the estuary, but climate change, obviously, if you guys didn't experience the past 2 days here in Jersey, it was pretty wet. So any conversation that talks about climate issues and helps to advance those long-term control plans are more than welcome. So there's those. There are also those that are at a municipal level where a number of municipalities in New Jersey are looking at climate plans and developing those further, especially since New Jersey just came out with their PAC rules as well. And so there's definitely a number of other initiatives that you can look out. I just named Resilient New Jersey as an example, but there are plenty, and I'd be happy to, reach out to me, and I'd be happy to point you to other areas of information that you can tie into. And for the second question, in terms of connecting with state and local entities, I'm happy to make introductions if you don't have those. Just feel free to reach out to me and we can do that. Another way, like that might be the easiest to be honest, but other than that, like looking at the programs page or utilities page or municipality, identifying who that lead person is that's working on that plan for the community is always a great person to reach out to make a connection. And let me know, Liz, if I didn't answer that question, the second part.
No, yeah, I think you definitely did. Rob, did you want to add anything else to that? Perfect. Okay. And then we have a next question here from Sam, who I can see is also on camera. So Sam, feel free to jump in if you want to clarify your question a bit more. But Sam wrote, with September 2025 final reports and 100K, is it possible to have a final report be a preliminary finding of a data research inquiry? For example, could final research be completed by September 2026 with engagement with our disadvantaged community to comment on preliminary hypotheses of the research project before September 2025? Sam, again, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything else to that question or clarify anything.
So, yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I think we all, both at HEP, and I'm sure everyone on the calls, kind of understands that climate resiliency is kind of a long-term endeavor, right? So the idea that we're not going to solve anything with these, relatively small grants. So whatever makes sense, being able to place your proposal in the context of a longer-term effort, in particular, how it might lead to additional funding and or deepen or create a partnership with a government agency or a researcher or another community organization, I think is all kind of appropriate and almost to be expected. So, great to see how this fits into a longer term vision.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Great. So let's move on to the next question. And just a reminder for everyone, feel free to raise your hands. I'm not seeing any hands raised, but if maybe you had it for a little while and I missed you, I apologize. But feel free to raise it again and we will get to you. Another question that came in is re-granting of funds to other local nonprofits or municipalities that match the criteria of your RFP permissible?
So I think it would depend. We definitely want to see. It's definitely possible, and I think for us it would be how you're going to ensure, and if you already have the commitment of when you say re-grant. Let me start that answer again. The answer is yes. You are permitted to kind of provide subawards or take some of your funds and use it to procure services from, let's say, a consulting engineer or whomever. That certainly is is definitely part of it, and there's some requirements there, but certainly it's something that we might even anticipate. If you're talking about kind of sub grants, in other words, that you would re-grant it as a separate sort of RFP, without that commitment of who those sub-grantees are, I think that would probably be viewed less favorably. We want to make sure these projects are completed. We're looking to you to have those partnerships in place, or at least, again, you'll score better if those partnerships are already in place.
Yeah, and just to, I guess, to add to that too, I think we're expecting, like if you're talking about stipends, for example, I think we could entertain that as well in that realm. So, I think we're kind of half expecting, stipends to be, incorporated to some degree, to especially help disadvantaged community, groups and members to participate. So that can also be considered. So it's just a matter of how you frame and lay out what it is that you're looking for in terms of distributing funds.
All such great questions coming in. Keep it coming, everyone. So moving on to the next one. Will the project have to lead to a specific water infrastructure / resource improvement? Can it be a project that may include funding from other sources?
So yes, it can include funding from other sources for sure. Again, that's something that we encourage. And again, in the LOI, we're not requiring a match, but if you can identify that this funding that you're seeking is, part of a larger initiative, we, would be thrilled to see that. And we want to make sure that you, highlight that within your letter of intent. Be explicit. And of course, like, as I mentioned, we do anticipate to have conversations with everyone who submits an LOI to better understand those. So like, granted a page or 2 pages max, right? It's really not a lot to kind of capture these greater and larger initiatives. We'll be sure to like have that conversation with you to have a better understanding of how you envision your this project and this funding source being applied to this like larger initiative that you're looking to dive into. And what was that first part of that question, Liz? Can you just repeat that? Just want to make sure I answered it.
Yeah, so it says, will the project have to lead to a specific water infrastructure and or resource improvement? So it looks like maybe this person's looking to see if there's a specific goal in mind.
Yeah, I think, not necessarily,
Yeah.
the tighter you can make your project goals and or you can articulate your project goals, objectives, deliverables, that's better. It's always easier for the reviewers to understand where you're headed. But, we understand that in some cases you might you're at a stage in a project or in a resiliency plan where you're developing ideas and or gathering data to better understand the situation. So as long as you can articulate kind of a clear pathway, it doesn't necessarily have to lead to kind of shovels in the ground, although, that's also a good thing. But we do want, again, the focus would be on being able to articulate that clear pathway about how this is going to enable you and a community that you're representing and working with to move forward with your resiliency efforts.
Exactly. And that is like one of the 4 like objectives that this RFP is about. So it certainly does not have to be shovel ready projects or, lead to improvements. The other objectives do identify, ways of co-production of knowledge and data gathering, looking to enable, disadvantaged communities to fully participate in these planning efforts or decision-making effort, like, depending on where you are in terms of your project, as well as, that power of collaboration is what we're hoping to see.
All right, and our last question, which very much falls in that area as well, is asking, can the project funding be used to help study the creation of a green / stormwater mitigation area in a disadvantaged community?
Yes, it can. Again, it would have to be tied into more of it being tied into like water resources management and climate resiliency. So it's not necessarily, don't just see this grant as like, this is an opportunity to install all this green infrastructure across, the harbor estuary. Although we'd love to see that, right? It should be, it should be more towards like you're addressing a flooding issue, for example, specifically with that project. So if you can show that and tie that as, this is part of like a climate resiliency plan or within a climate resiliency plan, and you want to further study that and if you can lead towards implementation, great. We certainly would want to encourage those LOIs to come through. But it shouldn't just be about the installation of green infrastructure mitigation efforts.
Great, and I think that was the last one. I'm looking to see in our list if anybody has their hands up. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you have a question. I think we got all the ones in the chat. Maybe we'll go ahead and give just a minute in case folks want to jump in. So we got one really good one from Sam in the chat. Are you prioritizing infrastructure solutions over identifying needs of the process or environment?
I wouldn't say we're prioritizing infrastructure solutions, to the degree that infrastructure is kind of, if you're defining infrastructure as some sort of engineered solution, whether it's green or gray or somewhere on that continuum, it can be a resiliency measure that is going to address, the climate implications for water resource management, in other ways, for sure. So doesn't have to be infrastructure, as an engineered solution as the priority, or as the only thing that qualifies. But I think, we do recognize that, addressing, whether it's stormwater flooding or coastal flooding, or, in some cases, other water resource needs, it's going to take some engineered solutions. I don't know if that answered your question, Sam.
I don't know. I guess I'm wanting to see it. Do you see it would be not meet the criteria if our research identified, I want to attack a particular regulatory process, but if we were going into our community and we were doing research on how well a government agency scoped the project, looked at our particular neighborhood, found deficiencies in the evaluation process, is that not as a valuable research or project as saying, oh, here's how the government should fix it?
I think that's as valuable and can be an important step. I think if you were looking kind of at an existing program, I think, again, part of what, and as Rosanna laid out, one of the objectives is to kind of help advance collaboration between community and government. And so, I think doing what you're suggesting, could be a super useful exercise. And I can think of a bunch of examples just off the top of my head. But what we'd want you to do as part of that is to think about, okay, well, what's next, right? Not just identifying the problem, but helping to, think about, what the solution would be, how the agency and community could move together to address, any deficiencies or anything you guys found wanting.
Oh, good. That's encouraging. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Rosina, I'm just going to ask you for a quick minute. If you can just go back to the slide with the LOI highlights. We're getting a question if you could just cover some of those major, bits a little bit specific to the LOI.
Sure. Just give me a second to find that slide again and share my screen. Okay, can you see that okay? Full screen?
Yep.
Perfect. So basically your letter of intent, you want to make sure that you are jumping into Appendix A for the template within the RFP. But basically you want to showcase, you want to have a project title, the lead organization and the contact information. You want to include the project location and the community being served by this proposal. So again, please do use that that toggled the interactive map that we created that incorporates our definition of disadvantaged communities, that incorporates both federal, state, as well as local definitions. You want to incorporate your prospective partners, as well as then providing that brief description of your project, anticipated activities and outcomes. So this is especially where we're going to be looking for where you're, incorporating one or more of these 4 objectives of the RFP, and you can see them here listed on the right. Your anticipated duration of the project. So again, we want to try to see that it is completed within the 2 years, so by June 2025, as well as then your requested budget for this project. But you want to also include in your total cost any match, in kind or outside funding or other type of match that will be contributing to the project. So you'll send that to me via email by June 1st at rosanna@hudsonriver.org, where you will then receive a confirmation email from me with the subject line climate LOI submission confirmation. So if you don't get that confirmation, make sure that you resend it. I check my emails frantically, so I'm sure that day I will be frantically refreshing all day to make sure that I see it and get you your responses. So if you don't hear from me by 5 o'clock on June 1st, frantically email me and I'll continue looking for those to make sure that you get your confirmation email from me.
Great, thanks, Rosanna. And then we did see just another question pop up in the chat. So can projects serve multiple locations? For example, a workforce development program active in restoration work in multiple areas covered by the HEP interactive map.
Yes.
We just,
That'd be
so
great.
yeah,
Go ahead,
what you
Rosanna.
want to do is like within the project location, make sure that you're capturing those locations. If there's specific, specific areas, if you want to hone in onto specific neighborhoods, you can go down to that level. That's fine too. Or if you have like a specific, site location already that you're considering for your restoration work, incorporate like lat logs as well, as that would be great too. So that way we can capture that and understand where exactly you're working in. And that might save you some space in terms of the page limit.
And just to add to that, and this has come up in other questions. So if you're setting up a workforce development program that's not located in a disadvantaged community, like the school or the office is not physically in one of the areas in the HEP map, that's fine if you can really demonstrate that the population you're serving are from disadvantaged communities. That's not quite your question, but I know that's come up before.
Yeah. Great addition, Rob.
All right, so let's see, checking for hands. Okay, we just got another question. Sorry, this one's coming in privately, so I'm just making sure I know what it's saying. Okay, we are getting a question. It says they were wondering if an institute of higher education with strong community ties are eligible to apply.
Sure, and I think maybe it goes back to what I was just saying. I think definitely an institute of higher education qualifies, and I think what we'd want you to do is demonstrate that you're serving a disadvantaged community that's you can identify on the HEP map, or a number of communities that are on the HEP map. So it doesn't have to be, your institution doesn't necessarily have to be in the disadvantaged community, but we will be taking kind of that hard look to make sure that you're meeting, again, the spirit of both, our intent, as well as, frankly, Justice 40 initiative from the White House.
Any other questions? Let's see, looking through the participants list, I don't see any hands raised. And we've got to all the ones that have come in the chat.
Awesome. Well, I guess then we'll wrap it up. We're almost at 2 o'clock anyway, so we're coming to a close. So we just want to thank everyone for coming today and participating in this webinar. We hope that it was helpful. A recording of this webinar will be posted on our webpage within the grant itself, where you are able to also download the RFP. We will also be sending around an FAQ for this. So if you wanted to reread the responses that we provided you live today, it will be written down in a document where we'll post it within the webpage, and I'll happy to also email that out to you all once that's live and posted. I could just send a quick email with that information. So again, the fun doesn't stop here. If you do think of other questions that you didn't get a chance to ask today, do feel free to email myself or Rob. I just dropped our email addresses back in the chat. So, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to, hear what you're interested in putting together. If you wanted some guidance, we're happy to help. And then, if you have any questions on how to submit the LOI, feel free to reach out to me and I can walk you through what we're anticipating. So with that, thank you everyone for being here today. I look forward to receiving your letter of intent on June 1st. So thank you everyone. Have a great day.